Nobody predicted this. Not the analysts, not the betting markets, not even the most devoted Filipino fans who had been following her every match for the past 2 years. A WTA 500 title, 5 matches, 5 opponents with 10 Grand Slam titles between them, all beaten in a single week in Washington, D.C. by a 21-year-old from Quezon City who entered the tournament ranked 28th in the world and left it inside the top 20 for the first time in her career. The biggest prize check of her life. 500 ranking points, and a trophy that no Filipino tennis player in the entire history of the sport had ever lifted before. This is what happened at the DC Open. And if you want to understand not just what she did, but how she did it, and what it means for everything that comes next, you need to start from the beginning of the week, because the beginning tells you something crucial about the kind of player she's become. The draw handed her Zheng Qinwen in round 1. Let's be clear about what that means. Zheng is not a lower-ranked player having a rough year. She's an Olympic gold medalist. Paris 2024. She swept her opponent in the final to become the first Chinese and first Asian player to win Olympic singles gold. She reached a career high of world number 4 in 2025. She has 5 WTA titles. The elbow surgery that forced her down the rankings and the first-round exits that followed didn't erase any of that. It just made her hungry. And a hungry former world number 4 with nothing to lose walking onto a hard court in Washington is exactly the kind of opponent that trips up higher-ranked players who come in expecting a straightforward opener. The match reflected that reality. Zheng came out with purpose, hitting through Alex from the baseline with the kind of flat, penetrating ball striking that her game has always been built around, generating pace that pushed Alex behind the baseline and kept her from taking the initiative on her own terms. The first set went to Zheng. And early in the second, the same pressure continued. A set and a breakdown, the match tilting in a direction that suggested a short, difficult week might be beginning. And then something happened that has been the defining feature of Alex's 2026 season. She made adjustments. Not panicked ones. Not a complete overhaul of what she was trying to do. Specific, targeted changes based on what the match was showing her. She started reading Zheng's serve direction earlier and stepping inside the baseline on returns instead of absorbing from deep. She became more aggressive on second serves, treating them as opportunities to set up the point rather than moments to survive. She varied her ground stroke pace, mixing flat drives with more topspin to disrupt the timing Zheng was finding on her own shots. Game by game, the match started moving in a different direction. She won the second set. Then she controlled the third, 6-1, with an authority that would have been difficult to predict from where the match stood an hour earlier. 4-6, 6-4, 6-1. The final scoreline looked clean. The journey to it was anything but, and the fact that she could produce that journey, could identify what was wrong while competing under pressure and fix it without the match getting away from her, is the single most important thing to understand about what happened in Washington that week. Because the same quality showed up in every single subsequent match, and each time the stakes were higher. Round 2 was always going to be the moment where the week's potential either expanded or collapsed. Leylah Fernandez, defending DC Open champion. One of the most tactically sophisticated players on the women's tour, someone who had beaten Alex convincingly in Stuttgart just months earlier, and who arrived in Washington with the kind of comfort and familiarity that defending champions carry at their title venues. If there was a point in the draw where it was supposed to end, this was it. And then Alex went out and took the first set 6-2 in 34 minutes. Dominant, purposeful, aggressive from the very first game. Fernandez barely had time to find her bearings before a set was gone. And then the second set swung the other way. Fernandez, to her considerable credit, didn't crumble. She's a champion, and she responded like one. She built a 5-1 lead in the second set, and suddenly the first set was starting to feel like an anomaly rather than a statement. 5-1 down against a defending champion on her home court is a genuinely precarious position. The ghosts of Stuttgart, the previous meeting that had gone badly, were very present in that moment. What happened next is what people will talk about for a long time when they discuss how Alex's career developed. She won 5 consecutive games. From 5-1 down, she reeled them off one after another, patient and relentless, and completely refusing to treat the situation as anything other than a problem to solve. She took the lead at 6-5, served out for the tiebreak, won the tiebreak 7-1, 6-2, 7-6. The defending champion was gone, not because she collapsed, not because the match was gifted, but because Alex took it from her in the moments when most players would have accepted the loss. That's character. That's the kind of mental and competitive quality that coaches talk about developing over years, and that you either have or you don't when the pressure lands. She had it completely in a second set against a defending champion when a 5-1 deficit would have broken a lot of players who are older and more experienced than she is. The quarterfinal against Elena Svitolina told a different kind of story. Not a comeback story this time. A dominant story. Svitolina was seeded second in the tournament, ranked world number 10, and was the same player Alex had beaten in Berlin just weeks earlier. The Berlin scoreline had been 6-3, 6-4. The Washington scoreline was 6-3, 6-4. Identical. Back-to-back tournament victories over a top 10 player on different surfaces, using the same controlled, aggressive game plan executed with the same precision. That's not a coincidence. That's not 2 lucky days in a row. That's a player who has figured out how to beat a specific type of opponent and has the consistency to reproduce that performance when it matters. She broke Svitolina's serve 6 times in the match. 6 times. Against a player at that level, that number reflects sustained pressure over the entire course of the match, not one good run. She spoke afterward about trusting her game rather than changing it under pressure, about staying in her rhythm even when her opponent was finding form. That tactical steadiness, knowing when not to adjust, is actually harder than knowing when to adjust. It requires a different kind of trust in what you've built. She showed both qualities in Washington: adaptability against Zhang, steadiness against Svitolina, and the ability to distinguish between the two situations in real time. Then came the semifinal. And this one was historic before a ball was struck. Alex versus Naomi Osaka. The first All-Asian semifinal in the history of a WTA 500 event. The tennis world had strong feelings about how it would go, and most of them proved incorrect. Osaka is a 4-time Grand Slam champion. She's a former world number 1. She has one of the biggest serves on the women's tour, and the kind of offensive ground strokes that can end a point from almost anywhere on the court. The power versus patience narrative that surrounded the matchup suggested a close, contested battle that could go either way. Alex won 6-4, 6-2 in 76 minutes. She broke Osaka's serve 4 times. She won over 70% of her first serve points. She was, in the clearest statistical and visual terms, the better player in the match from the opening game to the final point. Afterward, she said she could never count Osaka out, that she had to stay locked in on every single point because the 4-time Grand Slam champion could change the match with a single service game. That awareness, the respect for what her opponent was capable of combined with the unwavering belief in her own game, is what elite tennis looks like from the inside. You don't beat Naomi Osaka in straight sets by going through the motions or getting lucky on the big points. You do it by competing at an extremely high level for the full 76 minutes and refusing to give her the free points and the loose games that let her build momentum. Osaka's words after the match said more than any match preview could have. She called Alex incredible. She said the Filipina was a star. She said it was amazing to have someone like her that people could look up to. 4-time Grand Slam champion. Former world number 1. Saying those things about the player who had just beaten her. That's not polite post-match diplomacy. That's genuine recognition from someone who understands exactly what it takes to produce that kind of tennis at that level. And then there was the final. Jessica Pegula. World number 3. Top seed. 11 WTA singles titles. US Open finalist. The player who had ended Alex's run at the Miami Open 18 months earlier in a tight 3-set match that had been many people's introduction to what the young Filipino was capable of. The symmetry of that previous meeting showing up in the final wasn't lost on anyone who had been following the story. The player who had stopped her at a pivotal early moment in her career was now the last obstacle between her and the biggest title she'd ever won. Pegula, before the match, said what she genuinely believed. She called Alex the future of the tour. She said the future was already here. She walked out with the intent and the intensity of an 11-time title winner who wanted this tournament, and then she ran into a player who was playing the best tennis of her life and who had been building toward this exact moment all week. Alex broke her serve early, led throughout. The forehand that had been finding corners all week kept finding corners. The return game that had been aggressive all week stayed aggressive. She never allowed Pegula to settle into the kind of extended baseline exchanges where the American's consistency becomes a weapon. 6-3, 6-4. Straight sets. Clean. Controlled. Historic. When the final point landed and Alex raised her arms and the 7,000 people inside Rock Creek Park made that sound, the thing that was most striking about her reaction was how present she seemed it. Not overwhelmed, not disbelieving, present, like someone who had done the work to be there, and who was now standing exactly where the work was supposed to take her. That's a specific quality, and it's rarer than talent. Now, let's talk about the numbers, because the numbers frame what happened in a way that nothing else quite can. She entered the tournament at 28th in the world. Her semi-final win over Osaka alone before the final was even played guaranteed her a career-high ranking of 24th. The title pushed her to 20th. 8 places in 1 week. The first Filipino singles player, man or woman, in the entire history of professional tennis to reach the WTA Top 20. At Wimbledon this year, she beat 3 Grand Slam champions and reached the 4th round in a historic run that the whole country celebrated. That run earned her 240 ranking points and moved her to 28th. The DC Open, in 1 week, earned her 500 points and moved her 8 spots higher. More points in 7 days than her entire Wimbledon campaign. One tournament. The winner's prize money was $252,000. Converted to Philippine pesos, that's over 15 million. The largest single check of her career by a significant margin. Her total earnings across 2025 and 2026 combined with her endorsement deals, Nike, Babolat, Globe Telecom, BPI, had already put her past the $2 million mark for the year before Washington. The DC title adds a new dimension to that number and to the commercial conversations that will follow. She spoke about all of it with the disbelief and groundedness that have become her trademark combination. She called the ranking jump surreal, said it sounded crazy, and then she talked about the US Open. She didn't linger. That's who she is. The moment lands, she feels it fully, and then she's already looking at what's next. She said after the semifinal that she still had so much motivation to become a better player and a better person. 21 years old, just beaten a 4-time Grand Slam champion in a historic semifinal, and the dominant feeling is motivation for more. That's the kind of orientation that produces sustained excellence rather than a peak that fades. The cultural dimension of this week is the part that's hardest to put into numbers, but impossible to talk around. 127 million people in the Philippines were tracking this tournament through every available medium. Watch parties in Manila. Families gathered around phones in apartments in Dubai and London and Toronto and Los Angeles. Healthcare workers in American hospitals checking scores between rounds. People who had set alarms for 2 in the morning to catch the matches live because the time zones made any other option impossible. When Marcos honored her after Wimbledon, he said something that felt even more true after Washington. He talked about the grace with which she carries success. About how the way she plays and the way she conducts herself reminds the country of qualities they are proud of. About the best version of what it means to be Filipino on the world stage. Those weren't ceremonial words produced by a speechwriter. They were a recognition of something that anyone who has watched Alex in press conferences and on the court and in her interactions with fans has felt. She doesn't perform graciousness. She is gracious. She doesn't perform humility. She is grounded. The difference is visible, and it's what makes the community's connection to her feel so genuine on both sides. She's been called a nation unifier by media and fans across multiple platforms, and she consistently deflects the label, saying she just wants to have a positive impact, that she does her best to express the love and pride of being Filipino in everything she does. That deflection is itself evidence of the character that earned the label in the first place. And the diaspora element here is profound in a way that deserves direct acknowledgement. The global Filipino community, spread across every continent, linked by language and culture, and the particular kind of resilience that comes from building lives away from home, has been watching Alex with an intensity that goes far beyond sports fandom. She maps onto their experience in ways that are specific and personal. She left home young to pursue something in a foreign country. She built something from scratch, without a safety net. She competed against people with more institutional support and won anyway. That story resonates with every Filipino nurse and engineer and domestic worker and teacher who has ever built something meaningful far from home. When she holds a trophy, it's not just her trophy. That's not a metaphor. That's the actual feeling of millions of people who have been watching every match and who feel, genuinely and personally, that something they've been working toward has been recognized. Hospitals pause when she plays. That detail which Marcos mentioned, and which has been confirmed repeatedly by Filipinos working in healthcare across the United States and elsewhere, tells you everything about the scale of the cultural connection she's built. Now the US Open, Flushing Meadows, the biggest remaining event of the season. the final Grand Slam of the year. She'll arrive as a top 20 player, seeded